The sun had set, leaving the forest shrouded in darkness. The only light came from the thin sliver of the crescent moon, and the occasional flicker of a distant campfire. Four friends, Takeshi, Yuki, Haruto, and Miki, decided to spend the weekend camping in the dense forests of Akigahara, known for its eerie silence and dark history. The forest had always fascinated them. They had heard the stories of ghosts and spirits, but their curiosity overpowered their fear. They set up their tents near a small clearing close to a natural spring. The area was serene, with the gentle sound of water trickling and the rustling of leaves in the breeze. The night was cold, and the air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth. Takeshi, the group's leader, suggested they start a campfire. "Let's gather some firewood," he said, his voice cutting through the quiet night. Yuki and Haruto nodded, while Miki stayed behind to prepare dinner. The three of them ventured into the woods, their flashlights casting long, eerie shadows on the trees. As they gathered wood, they felt a sense of unease. The forest was too quiet, almost unnaturally so. No chirping of crickets, no hooting of owls, just an oppressive silence. They returned to the campsite and quickly started a fire. The warm glow of the flames brought some comfort, but the feeling of being watched lingered. Miki served dinner, and they sat around the fire, sharing stories and laughing. But their laughter felt hollow in the vast, empty forest. Takeshi decided to lighten the mood with a ghost story. "Have you heard about the phantom campfire?" he asked, his eyes gleaming with mischief. Yuki rolled her eyes, but Haruto and Miki leaned in, intrigued. "They say that on nights like this, when the moon is a thin crescent, a mysterious campfire appears in the forest. It's said to lure people away, and those who follow it are never seen again." Haruto chuckled. "Come on, Takeshi, that's just an old wives' tale." Takeshi shrugged. "Maybe, but there's a reason why they call it the Sea of Trees. People have been getting lost here for centuries." The conversation shifted, but the story of the phantom campfire stayed with them. As the night deepened, they decided to call it a night. They retreated to their tents, the fire slowly dying down to embers. Takeshi and Haruto shared one tent, while Yuki and Miki shared the other. The forest outside was pitch black, the silence only broken by the occasional rustle of leaves. Hours passed, and the forest seemed to grow colder. Miki, unable to sleep, decided to step outside for some fresh air. As she emerged from the tent, she saw a faint light in the distance. At first, she thought it was a reflection or a trick of the eyes, but the light flickered, unmistakably a campfire. Her curiosity piqued, she called out to the others. "Takeshi, Yuki, Haruto, wake up, there's something you need to see." The three stumbled out of their tents, rubbing sleep from their eyes. "What's going on, Miki?" Takeshi asked, a hint of irritation in his voice. Miki pointed towards the light. "Look, there's a campfire over there. It wasn't there before." Yuki frowned. "Maybe it's another group of campers." Haruto shook his head. "We didn't see anyone else when we came in, and it's too far for anyone to have set up without us noticing." Takeshi's face grew serious. "Let's check it out. Stay close and don't wander off." They grabbed their flashlights and ventured into the forest. Following the faint glow, the light seemed to move, always just out of reach. They walked for what felt like hours, but the campfire remained elusive. The forest grew denser, the trees closing in around them. The feeling of being watched intensified, and a cold sweat broke out on their skin. Finally, they reached a small clearing. In the center, a campfire burned brightly, but there was no one around. No tents, no supplies, just the fire. Takeshi approached cautiously. "Hello? Is anyone there?" There was no response. The fire crackled and popped, the only sound in the eerie silence. Haruto examined the ground. There are no footprints. It's like the fire just appeared out of nowhere. Yuki shivered. "This is creepy. Let's go back." But as they turned to leave, they realized they were lost. The path they had taken was gone, swallowed by the forest. Panic set in, and they began to argue. "We need to stay calm," Takshi said, trying to keep his voice steady. "We'll find our way back. Just stay close." But as they retraced their steps, the forest seemed to shift around them. Every tree looked the same. Every direction led nowhere. The campfire, once a distant glow, now felt like a trap. Hours passed, and exhaustion took over. They stumbled upon another clearing, identical to the first. In the center, another campfire burned. Mickey's voice trembled. "This can't be happening. We're going in circles." She clenched his fists. "There's got to be an explanation. This is just a trick of the light." But deep down, they all knew something was terribly wrong. As dawn approached, their flashlights began to flicker and die. The forest, once shrouded in darkness, was now bathed in a pale, eerie light. They collapsed near the campfire, too tired to move. As they drifted into a restless sleep, the fire burned on, its flames dancing in the early morning light. The forest watched, silent and unforgiving, as the phantom campfire claimed its latest victims. Thus ends the first section of The Phantom Campfire, a Japanese horror tale. The morning light did little to alleviate the terror that had gripped the four friends. They awoke near the phantom campfire, its flames now dwindling, but still inexplicably burning without fuel. Takshi was the first to stir, his eyes heavy with exhaustion and unease. He glanced around at his friends, who were beginning to wake as well. Mickey's eyes were wide with fear, Yuki's face pale, and Haruto looked as if he hadn't slept at all. "We need to find our way back," Takshi said, trying to sound confident. "But first, we need to put out this fire." Haruto nodded and approached the fire, but as he tried to extinguish it with dirt and water, the flames only seemed to grow stronger. "It's not working," he said, stepping back in frustration. Yuki bit her lip. "This isn't normal. We need to leave this place now." With no other options, they decided to abandon the campfire and find their way back to their campsite. The forest, bathed in the morning light, seemed less menacing, but an underlying sense of dread remained. They walked for hours, the dense foliage making it difficult to find any recognizable landmarks. As the sun climbed higher, the heat and humidity grew oppressive. The forest was a labyrinth, each turn and path leading them deeper into the unknown. Takshi tried to keep their spirits up, but the frustration and fear were palpable. "Let's rest for a bit," he suggested, noticing Mickey struggling to keep up. They found a small clearing and sat down, taking sips of water and trying to regain their composure. "How can we be this lost?" Yuki asked, her voice trembling. "We were so careful. It's like the forest is playing tricks on us," Haruto muttered, his eyes scanning the trees. Takshi tried to formulate a plan, but his thoughts were interrupted by a sudden rustling in the bushes. They all tensed, eyes wide with alarm. From the shadows emerged a figure, an old man dressed in tattered clothes, his face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. "Lost, are we?" the man asked, his voice raspy and low. Takshi stood up, cautiously approaching the stranger. "Yes, we're trying to find our campsite. Can you help us?" The old man chuckled, a sound that sent chills down their spines. "This forest has a way of keeping people who don't belong." "Who are you?" Mickey asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The old man lifted his head, revealing a face weathered by time and hardship. "Just a wanderer like yourselves, but I've been here longer than I care to remember." He pointed to the east. "Your campsite is that way. But be careful. The forest doesn't like intruders." With that, he disappeared into the trees, leaving the four friends more unsettled than before. Takshi hesitated but decided to follow the old man's direction. They walked in silence, each lost in their thoughts. The forest seemed to grow darker, the canopy thickening overhead blocking out the sun. After what felt like hours, they stumbled upon another clearing. To their shock, it was their original campsite, but it looked different. The tents were still there, but everything seemed untouched, as if they had never left. Yuki gasped. This is impossible. How did we get back here? Haruto checked his watch. We've been walking in circles. Mickey's eyes filled with tears. What are we going to do? She took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. Let's regroup. We need to think this through. They sat around the campfire, the atmosphere tense. The forest was eerily quiet, the oppressive silence returning. That old man, she began. He knew something. This forest, it's not normal. Yuki nodded. We need to find a way out, but we can't just wander aimlessly. Haruto suggested. What if we use our phones? Maybe we can get a signal. They checked their phones, but there was no signal, just static and interference. Defeated, they sat in silence, the weight of their predicament sinking in. As night fell, the familiar feeling of being watched returned. The campfire flickered, casting long shadows on their faces. She kept watch, his eyes scanning the darkness. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig set his nerves on. For example, suddenly, a figure appeared at the edge of the clearing. It was the old man again, but something was different. His eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and his voice echoed in the stillness. You shouldn't have come back. Panic set in, and they scrambled to their feet. Who are you? She demanded, his voice shaking. The old man stepped closer, his form shifting and changing. I am the guardian of this forest, and you are not welcome. The friends backed away, but the old man raised his hand, and the campfire roared to life, its flames reaching towards the sky. You must leave, or the forest will claim you. Fear gripped them, and they turned to run. But the forest closed in around them, the trees forming an impenetrable wall. The old man's laughter echoed in the darkness, a sound that would haunt them forever. She grabbed Mickey's hand. We have to find another way. They pushed through the underbrush, the forest growing denser with each step. The old man's voice followed them, a haunting melody that seemed to come from all directions. You cannot escape. The forest has already claimed you. Desperation fueled their movements, but exhaustion soon set in. They stumbled upon another clearing, identical to the first, the phantom campfire burning brightly. We're back where we started, Yuki cried, tears streaming down her face. Haruto sank to his knees. This can't be happening. Takeshi's mind raced, trying to find a solution. We need to stay together. If we separate, we'll be lost forever. The old man appeared once more, his form more menacing than before. Leave now or face the consequences. With no other options, they ran again, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. The forest seemed alive, branches reaching out to grab them, roots tripping their steps. But they didn't stop, driven by sheer willpower and the desire to survive. After what felt like an eternity, they burst through the trees and found themselves at the edge of the forest. The sight of open land brought a wave of relief, and they collapsed, panting and exhausted. We made it, Takeshi said, his voice weak but filled with hope. But as they looked back, they saw the old man standing at the forest's edge, his eyes glowing in the darkness. This is not over, he warned. The forest never forgets. The friends didn't wait to find out what he meant. They stumbled towards the safety of civilization. The memory of the phantom campfire and the guardian of the forest etched in their minds forever. The ordeal had left them shaken, but they were alive. As they reached the outskirts of a nearby town, they vowed never to return to Akigahara, the sea of trees. The forest had its secrets, and they had narrowly escaped its grasp. But deep down, they knew the old man's words would haunt them. The forest never forgets, and neither would they. The town they had stumbled into was a small, quiet place, nestled at the foot of the mountains. The narrow streets were lined with traditional wooden houses, their roofs covered in moss. It was a stark contrast to the oppressive darkness of Akigahara. And for a moment, they felt a semblance of safety. But the memory of the forest lingered, a shadow that refused to dissipate. Takeshi, Yuki, Haruto, and Miki found refuge in a small inn, run by an elderly couple. The inn was quaint and homely, with tatami mats and paper sliding doors. The scent of incense filled the air, a welcome change from the damp earth and pine of the forest. The couple, Mr. and Mrs. Tanaka, welcomed them warmly, sensing their exhaustion and fear. "You look like you've been through a lot, Mrs. Tanaka said kindly as she led them to their rooms. "Rest now. You are safe here." Despite her reassuring words, the friends found it hard to relax. They huddled in one room, unwilling to be separated even for a moment. Takeshi sat by the window, staring out at the town as night fell. "We need to figure out what's happening," he said, his voice low but determined. "The old man, the campfire, there's something we're missing." Yuki nodded, her eyes red from lack of sleep. "We need to understand why the forest is like that. Maybe someone here knows." Haruto, always the skeptic, sighed. "Do you really think anyone will believe us? They'll just think we're crazy." Miki, who had been silent, spoke up. "We have to try. We can't just run from this. The forest, it won't let us go." The others nodded in agreement, their resolve hardening. The next morning, they set out to find answers. The town's residents were friendly, but cautious, their eyes lingering on the newcomers with curiosity. The friends visited the local shrine, hoping to find some clues. The shrine was old, its wooden beams worn smooth by time. The priest, a man in his 70s named Yamamoto, greeted them with a solemn nod. "What brings you here, young ones?" he asked, his voice calm and measured. Takeshi explained their ordeal, describing the phantom campfire and the old man. Yamamoto listened intently, his expression unreadable. When Takeshi finished, the priest closed his eyes and sighed. "Akigahara is a place of great sorrow," he began. "Many souls have been lost there, and the forest has absorbed their pain." He paused, as if choosing his words carefully. "The campfire you saw, it is said to be a manifestation of the forest spirit. It lures those who are lost, feeding on their fear." Yuki shivered. "Is there any way to stop it? To escape its grasp?" Yamamoto shook his head slowly. "The forest is ancient, its power deep-rooted. It does not easily let go of those it claims." Haruto, frustrated, interjected. "There must be something we can do. We can't just give up." The priest looked at him with a mixture of pity and sadness. "There is one thing you can try," he said softly. "Seek out the guardian spirit of the forest. It is said that those who gain its favor may be granted a way out." Miki's eyes widened. "Where do we find this spirit?" Yamamoto gestured towards the mountains. "There is a hidden path that leads deep into the forest. Follow it, and you may find what you seek." The friends exchanged glances, a silent agreement passing between them. They had no choice but to try. That night, they prepared for their journey back into Akigahara. The inn's owners, Mr. and Mrs. Tanaka, wished them luck, their faces etched with concern. "Be careful, Mr. Tanaka said, his voice heavy with warning. "The forest is unforgiving." Armed with the priest's advice and their own determination, the friends set out at dawn. The hidden path was difficult to find, but with Yamamoto's directions, they eventually located it. It was narrow and overgrown, barely distinguishable from the surrounding forests. As they ventured deeper, the air grew colder and the oppressive silence returned. The forest seemed to close in around them, the trees, forming a canopy that blocked out the sun. Hours passed, the path winding through the dense underbrush. The friends spoke little, each lost in their thoughts. The deeper they went, the stronger the feeling of being watched became. Miki, walking at the rear, felt a chill run down her spine. She turned, expecting to see the old man, but there was nothing there. "Keep moving," Takeshi urged, sensing her hesitation. "We're getting close." Finally, they reached a clearing. In the center stood an ancient tree, its branches twisted and gnarled. The air around it felt different, charged with an almost tangible energy. "This must be it," Yuki whispered, her voice barely audible. They approached the tree cautiously. As they did, a figure emerged from behind it. It was the old man, but his appearance had changed. He seemed more ethereal, his form shimmering in the dappled light. "You've come seeking the guardian spirit," he said, his voice echoing through the clearing. She stepped forward, his heart pounding. "Yes, we need your help. We want to leave the forest." The old man's eyes softened, and for a moment he looked almost human. "The forest has tested you. It has shown you its power and its pain. But to leave, you must prove your worth." Yuki frowned. "What do we have to do?" The old man pointed to the ancient tree. "Within this tree lies the heart of the forest. You must face your fears and confront the darkness within." Haruto, ever the skeptic, shook his head. "This is madness. How do we even know this is real?" The old man's gaze hardened. "Doubt will be your downfall. Trust in the forest or be lost forever." With no other options, the friends approached the tree. Its bark was rough, and the air around it seemed to hum with energy. She placed his hand on the trunk, and a wave of memories washed over him. The pain and sorrow of those who had perished in the forest flooded his mind. He saw visions of lost souls, their faces twisted in anguish. But amidst the darkness, there was a flicker of light. He held on to it, focusing on the hope and determination that had brought them this far. One by one, the others followed, each experiencing their own visions. Yuki saw her family, their love and support giving her strength. Haruto faced his doubts and fears, realizing the importance of trust and faith. Miki confronted the trauma of her past, finding solace in the knowledge that she was not alone. As they stood together, the ancient tree began to glow, its branches radiating a soft golden light. The old man's form shimmered and shifted, revealing his true nature. He was the guardian spirit, a being of immense power and wisdom. "You have faced the forest and its darkness," he said, his voice filled with a gentle strength. "You have proven your worth." With a wave of his hand, the clearing transformed. The oppressive darkness lifted, replaced by a serene, otherworldly beauty. The friends felt a sense of peace, the weight of their ordeal lifting from their shoulders. "You are free to leave," the guardian spirit said. "But remember, the forest never forgets. Respect its power, and you will always find your way." With a final nod, the spirit faded into the light, leaving the friends standing in the clearing. They felt a newfound sense of hope and purpose, their bond stronger than ever. As they made their way back through the forest, the path seemed clearer, the trees less menacing. The sunlight broke through the canopy, guiding them towards safety. When they finally emerged from Akigahara, they were greeted by the sight of the town below. It was a welcome sight, a reminder of the world they had almost lost. They returned to the inn, where Mr. and Mrs. Tanaka greeted them with relief. "You did it," Mrs. Tanaka said, tears of joy in her eyes. "You found your way back." The friends nodded, grateful for the warmth and safety of the inn. They spent the night sharing their story with the Tanakas, their words, a testament to the strength and resilience they had discovered within themselves as they prepared to leave the next day. She looked back at the forest one last time. The memory of the phantom campfire and the guardian spirit would stay with him forever, a reminder of the power and mystery of Akigahara. But they had faced their fears and emerged stronger, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. With a final nod to the forest, they turned and walked away, the sun rising behind them, illuminating their path forward. The journey back to Tokyo was filled with a heavy silence. Each friend lost in their own thoughts. The bustling city streets and the familiar hum of urban life seemed surreal after their harrowing experience in Akigahara. They parted ways, promising to stay in touch, but an unspoken agreement lingered they would never speak of the forest again. She returned to his small apartment, the weight of their ordeal pressing down on him. He tried to slip back into his routine, but the memories haunted him. Each night, he dreamt of the phantom campfire and the old man's glowing eyes. The feeling of being watched never left him, and he found himself constantly looking over his shoulder. One evening, as he sat alone in his living room, a soft knock echoed through his apartment. He opened the door to find Yuki standing there, her face pale and eyes wide with fear. "Take she, I think it's happening again," she whispered, her voice trembling. She told him about the strange occurrences in her apartment, the flickering lights, the whispers in the dark, the sense of being watched. It was as if the forest curse had followed them back to the city. They decided to gather the others, hoping that together they could find a solution. Haruto and Miki arrived shortly after, their faces mirroring the same fear and confusion. "We need to go back," Take, she said, his voice firm. "We need to confront whatever it is that's haunting us." Haruto shook his head. "Are you crazy? We barely made it out alive." Miki, however, nodded in agreement with Takeshi. "He's right. Running away didn't work. We need to face this together." Reluctantly, Haruto agreed, and the four friends set out once more, heading back towards the forest that had nearly claimed their lives. The drive was tense, the air thick with anticipation and dread. As they approached the edge of Aokigahara, the familiar sense of unease settled over them. The forest loomed ahead, dark and forbidding. They retraced their steps, following the path that had led them to the guardian spirit. The forest seemed to recognize them, the oppressive silence deepening with each step. When they reached the ancient tree, the clearing was bathed in an eerie light, the air charged with the same strange energy. The old man, the guardian spirit, stood before them once more. "You have returned," he said, his voice echoing through the clearing. Take, she stepped forward, his resolve unshaken. "We need to understand what's happening to us. Why can't we escape this?" The spirit's eyes softened, and he nodded. "The forest has marked you. It will always be a part of you, as you are now a part of it." Yuki's voice trembled. "Is there any way to break the curse?" The spirit considered this for a moment before speaking. "There is a way, but it comes at a great cost." Haruto's skepticism flared. "What cost?" The spirit's form shimmered, revealing glimpses of the countless souls trapped within the forest. "You must offer a part of yourselves to the forest. Only then will it release its hold on you." Miki stepped forward, her eyes filled with determination. "We'll do whatever it takes. We can't live like this." The spirit nodded. "Very well. You must each confront your deepest fear, here in the heart of the forest. Only then will you be free." One by one, they faced their fears. Take, she relived the moment when he almost lost his friends in the forest, the crushing guilt and helplessness overwhelming him. Yuki confronted the loss of her family, the pain and sorrow tearing at her heart. Haruto faced his doubts and insecurities, the fear of failure and inadequacy that had always haunted him. Miki confronted the trauma of her past, the darkness she had kept hidden for so long. As they faced their fears, the ancient tree began to glow once more, its light intensifying until it enveloped them completely. The pain and fear seemed to dissolve, replaced by a sense of peace and acceptance. When the light faded, they found themselves standing outside the forest. The oppressive weight lifted from their shoulders. The guardian spirit's voice echoed in their minds one last time. "You are free, but remember, the forest never forgets. Respect its power, and you will always find your way." They returned to their lives, the memories of Aokigahara slowly fading into the background. The sense of being watched disappeared, and the strange occurrences stopped. But the bond between them remained, strengthened by their shared ordeal. Years passed, and they went their separate ways, each finding their own path. Take, she became a writer, his experiences in the forest inspiring a series of best-selling horror novels. Yuki found solace in helping others, becoming a therapist specializing in trauma. Haruto embraced his fears, turning them into a successful career as a motivational speaker. Miki channeled her trauma into art, her hauntingly beautiful paintings gaining recognition worldwide. Though they rarely spoke of the forest, the memory of their ordeal remained, a silent reminder of the power of Aokigahara. One day, years later, Take-shi received a letter. It was from Mr. Tanaka, the innkeeper who had sheltered them. The letter was brief, but its message was clear. The forest had claimed another victim, a lone hiker who had disappeared without a trace. Takeshi's heart sank as he read the words, the familiar sense of dread returning. He knew that the forest's curse was still very much alive. As he stared out the window of his study, the city's skyline stretching out before him, he couldn't shake the feeling that the forest was watching. The phantom campfire, the guardian spirit. The ancient trio of it felt as real as the day they had left. He knew that the forest never forgot, and neither would he. With a heavy heart, he picked up his pen and began to write, hoping that his words would serve as a warning to others. Aokigahara, the Sea of Trees, was a place of great power and mystery, and its echoes would forever haunt those who dared to venture into its depths.